Hello again, thank you for joining me for another video. So today I'm talking about a really hard topic, homelessness. When you are a spiritual being, it's not always perfume and daisies. Sometimes spirit has to direct and guide you through some pretty hardcore territory in order to get you to the other side. And for me, that included homelessness. I had like a real life tower moment. My whole life that I had been living was completely dismantled, destroyed. And I spent a number of weeks on the streets in Boulder, Colorado. No phone, no food, no money, no clothes, nothing. Zero. Um, so try to imagine yourself, if you can, being plopped in I'm not from Boulder, I'm from Minnesota. So if you can imagine being plopped down in a different city, different environment, with nothing, figure it out. So that's what happened to me. And, you know, I learned so much through the process. It's almost too much to really talk about. I, at the same time that I was being renewed physically, um, so just to back up a little bit, like the first like dropping of the veils and, kind of download from spirit realms or, aliens, angels, God, you tell me what it was because I don't know. That happened in 2003. There was a complete shift in how I viewed everything. It was like my Jesus has come back moment. Um, it was beyond anything that I had ever knew about. I guess I understood a little bit about shamanism prior to that, so there was some, understanding of that. But the full intensity of the bliss I experienced in 2003, there was nothing I had ever heard of prior to that to really help me integrate what I was experiencing. So I suppressed it. I suppressed everything that I really had heard and learned about in 2003 because I had no idea how to integrate. Um, the sudden knowing of how reality worked and the feedback mechanism of uh, the nature of things. It's almost like beyond what I can even quite figure out how to grab words to describe. Intense, overwhelming, perfected bliss. You don't need to eat, you don't need to sleep, you don't need to. The body feels completely different. It's all pervasive. Um, the landscape of reality changes into um, it's all God in a way. It's you're in communion with it in a way. It's like teaching you. So it's not just like, oh, I'm getting information from my mind. It's like everything turns and looks at you and like tries to help you. It's like being reborn, really, is what it felt like. And that happened in 2003. And I didn't have a way to integrate it. So, and then a lot of people got really mad at me in my family because it was like, put your nylons on, put your little, suit on and go be a secretary and make your $14 an hour. And, that's what you're supposed to do. And I could not have that experience, which was a tangible physical experience, um, which is still like, even when I think about it, can become very overwhelming very quickly. Just like so much love that came through, um, when some of the bigger spiritual forces come in to talk to you, it just makes your body tremble because you can feel the magnitude of them. Uh, but if someone isn't themselves experiencing that, they're just looking at you like you've lost touch with reality. Because what you're supposed to be doing is getting the husband and getting the picket fence and getting, like I said, put the nylons on and go be a secretary. That was like, that was the script. That was the script. And I didn't like it. And I'm like, that isn't going to work for me anymore. And simultaneous to that, I didn't know enough about the spiritual world. The only thing I had ever heard of, I knew a little bit about all back in the day. There was medicine women, there was shamans back in the day. There was a communal understanding of someone who was speaking to the spirit realms. Simultaneous to that, obviously, I knew about pastors. And so trying to, like, well, you know, it's not old timey, so I can't just go do that. Any kind of information I was trying to find about spiritual stuff was coming through these like weird little magazines that they had back then. Like if you went to a food co-op, a house food store, or whatever, they'd have these little free newspapers, and in the back, psychic readings or readings. Like that was the extent of the information I had about what was happening to me. I had literally no idea. And also everybody was telling me that I was crazy. So I believed them. I believed them and spent the next 10 years, to make a very long story short, spent the next 10 years, believing I was crazy and that my spiritual experience was not genuine. Every time I try to talk about this, my throat closes up. I I'm so hesitant to talk about it with people because there's a lot of programming, and I think that's why I initially wanted to do the video. And this time, I'm gonna keep on talking, and I'm just put the shit out there, export it, get it uploaded because I'm done. I'm done with the this sense that I'm not allowed to talk about what happened. I am not saying I understand it. I'm not saying that this proves God is real, this proves aliens, this proves angels. I don't know what it proves. I have no idea whatsoever. So I make no claims at all. I can tell you what I feel, what I sense, what my experience of it is, what sits well in my soul. But in terms of the rest of it, that's all language used to describe something that is beyond words for the most part. This is a sense, this is a feeling, this is a presence. It's a larger than life itself, I guess, is what it is. So how do you describe life itself when it's so all pervasive and encompassing and somehow gathers more for whatever reason in a certain circumstance? So after 10 years of kind of being in that suppressed, I had a child already. So my ex and I, he basically, was like, you're crazy. But literally in one of our custody hearings, brought my prayer journal in and used the fact that I believed I was talking to angels to prove I was an unfit mother. And by unfit, I mean like not fit to have full custody of my son. Like he needed to have primary custody because I thought I was talking to angels. So my spirituality really got turned into a sign of, they try to make me out to be schizophrenic, crazy person. And that was the label. I never got the label of schizophrenia like from a doctor, but that's the impression that they had of me and kept of me and presented to me anytime that there was court involved with me and him and my son, which devastated me. It devastated me. Um, and it kind of took away my will to live in a lot of ways. So I basically did whatever they wanted me to do so that I didn't lose any more ground with my son. I didn't want to lose any more time with him. I didn't want to lose any more, access or anything like that. So I moved to their tiny little town, farm country, 5,000 people, try having a spiritual awakening in the middle of some hardcore old traditional Christian beliefs. It was rough, to say the least. So it was almost as if that I was put into a retraining program. Take your pills, go to therapy, stop believing you could talk to God, and from people who were espousing Christian beliefs, telling me I was crazy for believing that God could heal people. It's like whatever was in the Bible, you're not supposed to take it literally, kind of like, all of the stuff that God promises happens after you die, not before. Now, that's not what I read. And that was certainly not what I was experiencing. So, all of the good things that I was experiencing, this sense of bliss and peace and communion, were labeled mental illness. And so it's still to this day, I don't even know how to talk about it because it's so unbelievable. It's really unbelievable to me. But nonetheless, so I did whatever they said. I did like 2 rounds of DBT. I did massive amounts of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. I had to take antidepressants, for a long time. And if you aren't actually chemically depressed, it'll really do some damage to you. Um, and it did. It did some damage to me. My brain stopped working properly. It was caused brain damage. I don't know what to tell you. I couldn't see reality correctly after a few years of this and extreme isolation. Everyone around me telling me, projecting onto me the essentially they tried to get me to believe that God didn't really love me like that because God doesn't operate that way. And if I thought I was talking to God, I was crazy. And everybody around me was telling me that and then holding my kid ransom. You either stop believing you're talking to God or you don't get to see your kid. We will take your kid away. Uh, so there's a bit of torture following a profound intervention by God and the big forces of love and light that are out there. So 2014 comes around, and my son that they had been holding ransom in this way, he was coming into adulthood, and the impact of what all of that had done on him came to the surface. He was in great distress and pretty badly damaged by all of it. And so it felt like, I had been taking a whipping for the last 10 years so that he could not suffer, because that's kind of basically what they, put on me. Like, if I don't do all of this stuff, I'm harming him. So I did whatever they asked. And then he was broken. And that, too, they blamed on me. So I kind of lost it. Realistically, I lost it. Um, I cried out pretty hardcore. I was at the end of my rope, and I didn't care what happened to me anymore. I didn't care um, if I seemed crazy. I wanted the sense of spirit back. And so it's like the the last veil was ripped away, and I was put through a bit of a bardo scenario where it seemed like I died, but I didn't really die. But the person that I was definitely did stop existing for the most part. And then it's like a new soul came in, and I had to train this new soul. And it's like the new soul didn't quite understand how this place operates. Um, I've heard the word carrier before, like I am a carrier of the soul. Like the body is the carrier of this future soul, this otherworldly soul. Um, I've heard people talk about walk-ins and that sort of thing, and I never really fully, appreciated that statement because it's like I'm still here. It wasn't like this soul left and another soul came. It's more like I'm still here. You know, I don't know how to say it another way, but the experience of going and being transported to Boulder, Colorado, where all of the suppression that I had been under for the previous 10 years basically kind of got um, dealt with in a few weeks of being there, and it felt so much like really an indescribable sense of being guided through it. So like things like I didn't want to look bad, so I remember one day like, oh, I wish I had makeup. I wish I could find makeup in a dumpster. I think I like thought something along those lines, and then I was sitting on a wall, and then a guy walks by with this little makeup case and sets it on a bench or whatever. I was on a bench. He set it on the wall, like 15 feet away from me, and sets it down, turns and looks at me, and walks away. And I was like, oh, it's a gift. And I went and looked, and of course it was makeup. And one day all I could say is I was like following the nudges, and somebody must have moved out of an apartment or a duplex or whatever, and so there was just tons of stuff by their dumpster, in the dumpster, outside of the dumpster, and a bunch of really cool looking clothes, and it was kind of still chilly. It was springtime, so I remember putting this jacket on, and it was like this like almost white tiger striped jacket. It was really cool looking. I put my hand in the pocket, and there's freaking $80, and it was like, oh, we get to eat for a couple of days. So it was all of these events where it was like completely taken care of, so completely taken care of, that I don't even really have, like, I could talk for hours on it. The guy who helped us, he was this homeless vet, probably just nobody you want to mess with, nobody you want to see in a dark alley. But he took, basically took us under his wing, taught us where you could find things like, at the end of the night they would throw out the donuts, for example, and if you got there when they were throwing them out, it didn't get all mixed into the dumpster stuff, and you'd have something to eat for the night. Which apartment buildings, at what time, when to go check out their dumpsters, and how to survive. And his name was Bert, and the first thing he gave us was these little Burt's Bees, lip thingies, I don't know, he found like a box of them, must have been behind a Walgreens or something. all brand new, sealed up. And I remember just thinking, because my name, bees and honey and anything like that is very relevant to me. I take it as a spiritual sign and symbol of God's paying attention here, so you should pay attention here. And so I was like, oh, he's our little, spirit guide dude, homeless, veteran, crazy man. And he was crazy. There was a couple times he went absolutely ballistic, and we'd have to stay away from him for a couple of days. So the rest of the time, though, he had read the Mayan Codex. Somehow they had some copy of something in the library there at the university, and he had gotten in there and was looking at it and was saying a bunch of cool stuff about the Mayan Codex. And it's like all of the weird things about prophecy and future scenarios was playing out. All of my spiritual knowingness was playing out in real life, in real time. It wasn't just in my mind anymore. It was like for real, for real. And yeah, truly astounding. So I have a really hard time, for me, being homeless was my guides taking me on a vision quest and teaching me about, holographic humans and possessed humans and, the way that we recreate stories. Um, I had, like, my body could be, this is going to sound really weird, but like they could send extra energy to help me when I was in pain. They could like take away, like if I had to go to the bathroom and it was like, 4 blocks to get to the 7-Eleven, they could like, if I asked for help, they would like remove it until I got there. I don't know how to explain it, but it's like my body was also um, like helped in such a way that it really felt like an avatar. It felt like my body was part of this, you know, mixed reality place, and I really felt the ways that all of this is controlled, and the veils and what we can see and what we can't see, and all of the different kinds of people that are here, and so intense. And I say all this, and I think, we can get really caught up in our ideas of the narratives and the projections, and we fail often to remember how many times we've heard a specific thing before we've taken it on as belief. And that, no government would allow some of the, no true caring, concerned collective of people would just not give a shit about the amount of people that are suffering at this point. Uh, there's a lot of lies about homelessness, and very sophisticated lies about homelessness. Very sophisticated and pretty much nonstop. We had one homeless person in the low income neighborhood I grew up in. So 40 years ago, there was one dude, and he was well taken care of by the neighborhood. The people who owned businesses let him sweep and gave him food. And, it was a small little 12-block neighborhood. It was not hard to take care of him. And that is a very different scenario than what we're seeing today. And, so I really, for me, it was how my spiritual team and guidance system reset me, put me back on track. Um, I had to sleep on the ground to get healed and reset. And just the world is not so easy to make sense of. And so we get a lot of stories to try to make sense of it. And I just would hope that people would remember that those are often stories. Um, it isn't always a case of somebody made mistakes and they can't pull themselves out of the mistakes. You know, I don't know. I don't know. I met a lot of weird spiritual creatures who were not um, average by any stretch, in my experience. And it's something I can't talk about because the projections regarding um, homelessness, like even the people who know me, they still think I wasn't spiritual during that time. They still think that's what propelled me to become spiritual, and that was the most spiritual time. Now I'm pretty well, I'm trying to just like act like everybody else. But the experience being plopped down in a strange city with zero belongings and finding your way back is it's profound. There's no doubt in my mind about the multidimensional nature of reality. Not a single doubt whatsoever about that. I just don't know how to deal with people who can't drop their projections long enough to hear someone else speak on a topic that they only know from secondhand sources. You know, highly manipulative secondhand sources. There's something very big and meaningful that happens on this planet. And you could be learning a lot more about it if you would look outside the regular, the average, the experience that everyone else is having, and investigate some of these things for yourself. So, I don't know if I said anything of value. I feel a little better having talked about it this much at least. So, may this find you well. Until next time, take care.